The show is starting.
The day is dawning and here is the sun. Hail His Majesty the Sun. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The sun is the one who fills you with fun and shoots your blues away. And we are the ones who bring in the sun and do it every day. Hail His Majesty, hail His Majesty, hail His Majesty the Sun. Sunshine, there. Joy, there. la 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 la.
I don't want to be happy. I want to be sad. I don't want to be happy.
I want to be happy.
I want to be glad. I want to be happy and glad and never again be sad. I never will cry, I never will sigh, 'cause I want to be glad.
He never will cry, he never will sigh, 'cause he wants to be glad. And now the world looks bright and fair, because the sun shines everywhere.
The finest in underground television.
Thou, still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, sylvan historian who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme, what leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape, of deities or mortals, or of both, in Tempe or the dales of Arcady? What men or gods are these? What maidens loath? What mad pursuit? What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes, play on, not to the sensual ear, but more endeared, pipe to the spirit, ditties of no tone. Fair youth, beneath the trees, thou canst not leave thy song, nor ever can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never shalt thou kiss, though winning near the goal. Yet do not grieve, though thou hast not thy bliss. She cannot fade, forever wilt thou love, and she be fair. Oh, happy, happy boughs that cannot lose thy leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu. And happy melodist, unwearied, forever piping songs, forever new. More happy love, more happy, happy love, forever warm and still to be enjoyed, forever panting and forever young, all breathing human passions far above that leave the heart high sorrowful and cloyed, the burning forehead and the parching tongue. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leads thou that heifer lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks with garlands dressed? What little town by river or seashore or mountain built with peaceful citadel is emptied of its folk this quiet morn? And, little town, thy streets forevermore shall silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can e'er return. O Attic shape, O attitude, with breed of marble men and maidens overwrought with forest branches and the trodden weed, thou, silent form, dost tease us out of thought, as doth eternity. Cold pastoral, when old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe than ours, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know.
Here before you is an opportunity to plumb the depths of the mysteries that confound and intrigue us. A chance to ask the big questions. Dr. Hal is not concerned with questions of trivial matters or of facts that are easily gathered elsewhere. Dr. Hal seeks the questions that transcend fact. He stands before you, ready to take questions that used to be brought to wise and aged sages on distant mountaintops. These questions can now be asked from the comfort of your living room. No Sherpas required. Simply direct your favorite web browser to our new and simple-to-use website, AskDrHalShow.com, or click the Ask Dr. Hal button below our live Twitch broadcast. You will be spirited away to the magical Ko-Fee portal, where all you need do is submit your burning question in the handy message field, and assign a monetary value you wish to place upon it. Our stage ghost will then convey your message live to Dr. Hal, and he will answer in the manner that only Dr. Hal can. Don't worry, we never sell, share, or solicit using your provided email address. PayPal will ensure that your valuable love offering goes directly to Dr. Hal and the further maintenance of this show. Links to submit questions and more can be found at our website, AskDrHalShow.com. Do not let this opportunity to consult a modern-day oracle, a seer for seers, a man steeped in the arts, sciences, and esoteric studies, pass you by. We present to you, through the very miracle of the internet itself, the one and only Dr. Hal Robins, now making house calls.
There we are. I was a little quick on that button. Hey, Dr. Hal.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I think I do well, and it's nice to be back doing another show, the first of our quarterly shows for this year.
Isn't it? And what a show we have. It's nice to have that extra production time to put all this together. It's quite an experience, and we really enjoyed it. And we picked up an assistant producer. Professor Gofflin is joining us this evening, which we're very, very excited about.
Yes, we are.
I don't know if I should say anything. I'm just here lurking in the silence.
We're glad you are.
You'll be seeing more of Professor Gofflin, we hope. Thanks, Goff. The voice pops in. That's wonderful.
Do we have questions in the question queue for this show?
You know we do, and if you're raring to get started, it sounds like we do have some questions. So let me go ahead and shake that jar. I'm going to refresh everything, and very good. Okay, first off, we have well wishes from Dr. Billy. He did not submit a question, but he sent along to you $15. That's
wonderful.
Yep.
He provides us with music as well as with support.
That music is worth its weight in gold to us. So yeah,
From the Empire Jazz Orchestra.
Fabulous stuff too. I have never heard a piece from them that I don't like, but I do have a question for you, and question would be from Freighter Young Chuanosaurus, old friend of the show. And it is a $15 question, and he says, you've memorized thousands of great poems. Have you memorized any bad ones? And what makes a poem a bad poem?
Well, a bad poem can be trite and mawkish, poorly conceived, written to answer a question which should never have been asked, and have all sorts of such qualities and considerations. But that's not to say that some of them are not enjoyable. There are those who enjoy bad poems, and they sometimes have something that causes them to stick in memory like the good ones. Most famous among bad poets was Julia Moore, called the Sweet Singer of Michigan, whose poetry was terrible in an epic way. So, in that time, Mark Twain and a bunch of other jokers promoted her as being the latest thing, and people howled with laughter at her poems, but some people liked them. She wrote a poem about the Ashtabula Railroad disaster, which began, "Oh, have you heard of the dreadful fate of Mr. P.P. Bliss and wife?" That was the first line. Or she was also caricatured in Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, who, when Huckleberry Finn was visiting the Shepherdsons and Grangerfords in the middle of their terrible family feud, and they preserved the writing of a member of their family who, like Julia, was always writing about the death of small children and had a whole trove of those. One of Julia Moore's poems begins, "While eating dinner, this dear little child was choked on a piece of beef." And it goes on from there. At any rate, you can see, as bad as they are, there's some part of me that enjoys remembering these attempts.
I have. Now, this is a $30 question.
Oh, good heavens.
That's such a nice number, $30. All numbers are nice. We love all
we
numbers.
like the rounded ones, of course.
But yes, the ones that end in 0 are especially enticing to us. And we have one here from Reverend Xenofact, another old friend of the show.
That is so.
And also a fascinating question. What food do you consider to have the most fascinating history, and would you share it with us, please?
The food with the most fascinating history. Well, one is fascinated by the taste of food more than its history, and there are many foods that have an unusual history. For example, the sirloin steak got its name by being knighted and was called sirloin of beef by a delighted king. But how fascinating is that? I'm fond of pies, of course. I think everyone likes pie, but their history is prosaic and unremarkable. One doesn't like to hear of strange and unappetizing ingredients being sneaked in. I'm thinking of what food has an interesting history. Many foods were thought to be inedible and only gradually became fit to put on the table. The humble tomato and other members of the deadly nightshade family, some people refuse to eat them even today. The Napoleon pastry is, of course, named after Napoleon Bonaparte, but did he ever partake of it? That is unknown to me. I would say that the most interesting history of any food comes from the story of puddings, or perhaps even to change this completely. What about cheese? Cheese is quite interesting. In my library, I have a peculiar book called The History of Cheese, put out to no one's surprise by the Kraft Company, which describes how in Neolithic times a reported caveman, though it might easily have been a woman of that time, carried milk in a sheep's stomach for convenience's sake, and thus discovered the property of rennet in a sheep's stomach, which converts milk to cheese. And I believe this is still the method, at least according to the Kraft Company, by which all cheeses are made today.
We've actually made cheese using a little bit of vinegar in milk.
Well, that would do it. Though I don't know, how did it compare with the sheep's stomach in that regard?
It's a little different, but I mean, you use such a small amount of vinegar, you can just barely taste that little bit of added acidity. But it's nice for making fresh cheeses,
as opposed to the lingering stomach acid in a bovine character's discarded stomach, or a grass eater, at any rate. $30 is a noble sum, so I will say a poem here.
Thought you might.
This is from Hellas by the famous atheist poet Shelley. Worlds on worlds are turning ever from creation to decay, like the bubbles on a river, sparkling, bursting, borne away. But they are still immortal who through death's orient portal and the dark chasm, hurrying to and fro, clothe their eternal flight in the brief dust and light gathered around their chariots as they go. New shapes they still may weave, new laws, new gods receive. Bright or dim are they as the robes they last on death's bare ribs had cast. A power from the unknown god, a Promethean conqueror came. Like a triumphal path he trod the thorns of death and shame. A mortal shape for him were like the vapor dim which the orient planet animates with light. Hell, sin, and slavery came like bloodhounds, mild and tame, nor prayed until their lord had taken flight. The moon of Mohammed arose, and it shall set, as while blazoned on heaven's immortal noon, the cross leads generations on. Swift as the radiant shapes of sleep from one whose dreams are paradise fly when the fond wretch wakes to weep, and day peers forth with her blank eye, so sweet, so faint, so fair, the powers of earth and air fled from the folding star of Bethlehem. Apollo, Pan, and Love, and even Olympian Jove grew weak, for killing truth had glared on them. Our hills and seas and streams, dispeopled of their dreams, their waters turned to blood, their dews to tears, wailed for the golden years.
Beautiful, Hal. See, this is why I love when people make those donations, because we get you to do more recitations, which is always a pleasure.
Yeah, well, and donations and recitations also rhyme.
Yes. Yes.
Coincidence or conspiracy?
Maybe a little of both. Well, we have our first monster movie moment.
Well, this should be enlightening and illuminating.
Right? And they're all, and these things are so much fun. And the movies that I have gotten to sit through and watch doing this is just...
That's a side benefit, I think.
Oh, it's been a total education doing this stuff. These movies, even the terrible ones, are wonderful in their own weird sorts of ways. It's remarkable.
Yes,
So-
people who appeared in them thought they were negligible, but they turn out to be the only ones that the people of this era bother to watch.
And the one coming up, it probably inspired generations to go into practical effects and animation and all that stuff. So, but let's let the monster movie moment speak for itself. Here it comes.
Very good. We return now to Skull Island, more properly Skull Mountain Island, the real one, east of Madagascar and west of Sumatra in the Indian Ocean. The home, as it was, of King Kong. But King Kong had a son who we will shortly meet.
That was remarkable stuff. It really is.
So much art went into the creation of those, so much painting done on sheets of glass and other things, all in the pre-digital days of creating a fantasy scene. Well, I understand the queue of questions is practically filled to the top.
Well, we're going to drain it off. There's always room for more. It's like Jell-O. You know, there's always room for more questions. We always have room. But
always room for dessert, they say.
But we do have a nice selection of questions for you this evening, Dr. Hal. But these are easy questions for you. They're you just pour this stuff off the top of your head. So
we'll see. They may be a challenge. We know not until they are served unto us.
So now all of these questions would be a challenge for me, but for you, it is what you do. And folks, I want to remind you, please do get your questions into the good doctor. You can hit our page out on co-fi.com/askdrhal, and we'll be putting that link up in the chat. So get those questions in. We have lots of room, trust me. We can fit you all in tonight. It is not a problem at all. I have a question here. I think I went back in time too much. Let me get up here. There we are. We're back in present day. From our good friend Agrajag. Tomorrow is the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere, and this was already printed in my calendar. What was the point of asking all those groundhogs? And that is a $21 question, Hal.
Well, according to the tradition, the groundhog or woodchuck, Marmotus monax, can predict the length of snowfall when considering the advent of spring. Of course, it occurs like clockwork on the calendar day, but given that weather is a fluid dynamic system, and especially given the weird weather we have now caused by the disruption of the planetary cycle, one can't really be sure what will portend. And so asking the groundhog is, in a sense, as legitimate as asking any other oracle. The best thing about it is it gives the occasion for a party, and it's another one of the cherished festivals, cherished by humans, that mark the turning of the year. I wouldn't be in favor of giving it up, and of course, the inhabitants of Punxsutawney, where the titular groundhog resides, would be sad to be deprived of their time in the first sunlight, perhaps, of spring.
That was a God knows what that was noise. I hope that wasn't something disconnecting.
I hope so too. Well, we're dealing with computers here. Let us simply proceed.
Here we go. I can hear that roller coaster cranking up the hill. Let me see. I have a $30 question here from our another good friend, Reverend Xenofact. And I'm sorry, Hal, I read that to you already. It was the question about food. I have a $32 question, however, from Reverend Big John, Dr. Reverend Big John. Is ephemeral the opposite of eternal? If not, what is the opposite of ephemeral, and what is the opposite of eternal? I promise this is not for the tattoo I'm planning.
Well, that is good, since a tattoo is eternal and ideally not ephemeral. But what is ephemeral is not lasting. One might say transitory is a more perfect opposite to eternal, but both are concepts which we can't really vouch for, but only sense. The length of time is beyond human calculation, and to all intents and purposes, it might as well be eternal. But what is ephemeral or transitory, we can see passing easily, and know, therefore, that we are moving forward in time, something which we all need to be reminded of from time to time. Would you refresh my memory as to what the second part of that question was?
Yes, give me just a moment. I was scrolling through the other questions. It
Rolling
is
through
okay.
the part of the day.
I will read the question in its entirety, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
ephemeral the opposite of eternal? If not, what is the opposite of ephemeral, and what is the opposite of eternal? I promise this is not for a tattoo I'm planning.
Only we and our bodies and life so ephemeral buck the grind and the cosmos's doses of Demerol, if I may quote a doggerel from an old Professor Brainerd strip. We hope that we will live eternally in an afterlife, according to many religions, but then can you live with yourself beyond a human lifetime? Or even can you stand yourself for half that time? If you're able to be conscious for an eternity, more power to you. But I think that is a flaw that theologians never really got a handle on. It was better expressed in the Twilight Zone, where petty criminal goes to what seems like heaven, gets everything he wants, and then he finally says, you know, this just isn't working for me. I think I better go to the other place. And the celestial minister says, you fool, this is the other place. You see, if you haven't gotten rid of all your psychic garbage, it will travel with you into the eternal sphere and become a torment to you. That's the implication. I prefer to wait and see in this instance. So things in transit are of less duration than us, essentially. Things that are eternal or appear so are of greater duration than us.
Dr. Hal, I usually wouldn't say this, but this seems like a great place for a recitation.
Well, then I suppose I should do that.
And we also have a few minutes for the queue to build up, so audience, get your questions in. We would love to hear what is on your mind to get it off of Dr. Hal's.
This is by Tennyson. Tears, idle tears, I know not what they mean. Tears from the depths of some divine despair rise from the heart and gather in the eyes when looking on the happy autumn fields and thinking of the days that are no more. Fresh as the first beam glittering on a sail that brings our friends up from the underworld. Sad as the last that reddens over one which sinks with all we love below the verge. So sad, so fresh, the days that are no more. Ah, sad and strange as in dark summer dawns the earliest pipe of half-awakened birds to dying ears, when unto dying eyes the casement slowly grows a glimmering square. So sad, so strange, the days that are no more. dear as remembered kisses after death, and sweet as those by hopeless fancy feigned on lips that are for others, deep as love, deep as first love, and wild with all regret. Oh, death in life, the days that are no more.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Hal.
Sure.
Well, we have a new guest on the show, the Dust Bowl Faeries, and they blow me away, Hal. They were turned on to us by our good friend, Professor Trixie Mothersbaugh.
Oh, great.
Who has a little cameo in this video that we're about to show you, but it's a brand new band. Try to pick her out. She's in there pretty quick, but it's a good role.
Okay.
And this is a brand new band. This is the first time we're showing them, but you will see more of them. They're absolutely fabulous. So without further ado, before I go, audience, questions to Dr. Hal, get them in. We would love to get them answered for you tonight. Remember, if you don't do it tonight, you're going to have to wait 3 months for us to come back just before summer dawns. So June 18th will be our next show after this one. So more on that later on. And here are the Dust Bowl Faeries. They're awesome.
Yes, but all that candy burned up.
Well, you know, happy ending though. Everyone wins in the end.
Right.
Well, we have more questions have come into the queue, so it's a wonderful evening, Hal. We do still have room. We always have room for questions, so get those questions in. It's not too late. All right, let's see what we have in the queue, Dr. Hal. I have a question here. It is a $3 question. It's a really interesting question, however.
Uh-huh.
Can you please explain the thelemic doctrine of 0 equals 2?
Well, I think the thelemic doctrine comes from the Abbey of Thelema, where the author was one Aleister Crowley. Perhaps I'm thinking of a different Thelema. But the doctrine of 0 equals 2, was that it? It's not unknown in magical circles. It is to void the belief in the duality of the universe, that there are two opposing forces, the force of creation and the force of destruction, or the force of light and the force of darkness. To the practitioner of such things, this is simply a smoke screen obscuring the actual nature of the worlds which we inhabit. There is no duality, and therefore 2, which is proposed by so-called devil worshippers, is equal to 0 in this context. But I don't know how actually entertaining that is, or even if that was meant by this assertion. I have to warn that most occult writings are a labyrinth that one can never get out of, and the study of the occult is strongly discouraged by this show.
But, you know, use at your own risk.
But people will mess with it, and whatever I say, they'll go charging right ahead and trying to do conjurations without considering the possible consequences, not casting a horoscope for the most auspicious time, all that stuff. So what can we do except watch out for that? It's better that you never go there.
Well, we can always hope that at least they come up with a good movie plot out of it all.
That's true. And it's been said that there are only a few plots, but there are so many ramifications. Well, I hope that was $3 worth as an answer.
That was wonderful. I have a question here from our very good friend, Dr. Wolfgang Amadeus Gotthardamerung. And it is a $15 question. And it is. I was recently looking at Zdeněk Burian's, no idea who pronounced that first name, I'm with him.
I think it's Zdeněk.
Did I get it, Zdeněk?
No, I don't know how to pronounce it. That's just my idea.
We are in agreement. Perfect. illustrations for Doyle's The Lost World, and began to wonder if you had a favorite or favorites among various artists of prehistory. I will reread that. I was recently looking at Zdeněk Burian's illustrations for Doyle's The Lost World, and began to wonder if you had a favorite or favorites among the various artists of prehistory.
I have many favorites, and I don't elevate one above the others. But if I did, Burian would certainly be a candidate. A wonderful illustrator whose representations of prehistoric life have been recently featured in a series of articles in the Prehistoric Times magazine, to which I have a subscription. I've also collected his large, oversized volumes throughout the years, which grow harder and harder to get. I really regret that I don't have his illustrations of The Lost World or of the lesser-known Plutonia by Vladimir Obruchev, which is another story of encountering prehistoric life. In Obruchev's novel, two Russians discover an opening into the inner world, which all readers of pulp fiction know is inhabited by prehistoric creatures. As far as these two Russians went, they would go farther and farther in and discover more and more ancient life. Eventually, they had their troubles with giant ants. But I'll also say these Russians had a tremendously negative effect on everything they found, scaring and terrorizing primitive mammals and dinosaurs, setting fires, being a two-man ecological catastrophe in their scientific explorations. And I think they burned out the ants, although I can't remember that clearly. Then when they retraced their steps and emerged from their crevasse, they were captured and interned during the duration of the First World War, which was happening on the surface at the time. But back to Burian, his great books, Prehistoric Reptiles and Birds, Prehistoric Man, The Age of Monsters, Prehistoric Sea Monsters, and I think there's one that, Prehistoric Animals, that all existing in large, oversized editions from Paul Hamlin in London that have the beautiful color plates. But most people would say, Burian, who's that? It's Charles R. Knight, who is the foremost explicator of prehistoric creatures. And in fact, Knight did create all the iconic images of dinosaurs that we are familiar with. He was an incredible artist depicting animal life and a great painter. And to him, dinosaurs were not even central. And yet it's his versions which created the creatures that we see in King Kong and other things at the time. Knight did some of his best restorations, as we call them, of prehistoric life in the 1890s. But an interesting fact about him is that as a child, he was engaged in a rock fight, and some kid hit him in one eye with a rock, permanently blinding him on that side, and his remaining eye could barely see. And yet he created these amazing, large, and beautiful paintings, now the property of the American Museum of Natural History in New York, though good luck trying to see them, and a series of fantastic sculptures as well. He was particularly good with the prehistoric animals, but with all life forms. These two people have passed from the scene, but there are today great artists of prehistoric note. One of them is James Gurney, who wrote those Dinotopia books. If you can ignore that, he did wonderful illustrations, which was used by the U.S. Postal Service to create dinosaur postage stamps. There's also Mark Hallett, the cartoonist and illustrator William Stout. There are many active in the field, and it is right and proper that they should be, because we have the opportunity today, unlike any other time in human history, to look farther out into the universe and into the past than any previous generation. And so I feel that art should reflect this knowledge and not be confined to what the critics favor above all else, the novel or relation of bourgeois love affairs.
Awesome. Wow. I have an $11 question from Duckman and it states, my cat Peanut is the floofiest, orangest, lickiest kitty there is. How could such a magnificent creature even exist on the same plane as us base humans?
Well, a most interesting question, and I'm sure the fluff that the cat has necessitates the licking, since the coat must be maintained. All animals with a variable coat of an epidermis are facing the same problem, which is how to groom themselves. This is one reason why one can't imagine that dinosaurs had feathers, which is a current cult called claydism in today's paleontology, which I won't get into. But how would dinosaurs groom their feathers if they had them? It is necessary to keep the fur from being dirty and from sticking out. And all such structures, feathers, hair, fingernails, and toenails, and so on, are made of the same substance, which is called keratin. But it is quite possible, indeed inevitable, that the fluffy and licky cat inhabits the same plane as the fallible humans. They themselves, being apes, engage in grooming, although perhaps if they engaged in more, they would be as happy as some of the apes are. The cat is a commensal species whose evolution and distribution goes in accompaniment with the humans. Wherever humans are, there are cats and dogs. And I am in contact with a cat worshipping cult out here, which I have often worked with and done things for. The felinolatry people who have placed catoliths or large cat-shaped stone monuments in the city of San Francisco. These are interesting because they contain interesting devices. They sense the presence of people near them. If you put your hand on their stomachs, they emit a loud purr, and so forth and so on. So it has happened that humans and cats travel together and live together. People have often said, how come they can't be miniaturized, which would be more convenient? That's a sort of a typical human question. The fact is that although you can miniaturize dogs, you can't really miniaturize cats, because a cat is already a miniature. The smallest the smallest size that a feline creature can accommodate. The standard cat is the big cat, the puma, the lion, the tiger, the leopard, and so on. We have not succeeded in bringing those creatures into our hearths and domiciles. But as long as there are people, there will be cats, as incredibly destructive as they are to all the wildlife that surrounds them.
We just discovered we have a cat colony that visits our yard on a regular basis. We have like 7 or 8 cats.
Do you put out food for them?
No, we don't.
That's wise.
If you
want them to be a permanent installation.
Yeah, no, we'd rather they actually. Well, they're it's probably getting to be a feral colony, so that we may be looking at doing a capture with them. Ooh, that would make
a good. Are they friendly?
No, we have not been able to socialize with any of them yet, so It's
Well, not only do cats kill everything that they find, but people are often dumping them into the environment when they are inconvenient. And so you have the feral cat colonies everywhere, too, where you find humans.
yeah. Well, it was funny. It's we found out cat colonies are mostly all female. And but we did find that there was a visiting male because clearly in the critter cam that we caught him on, we get a big shot of two hairy testicles. So he was probably busy with the ladies.
Yes, that rings true.
So
Another side drip into personal zoology.
yes, yes. Glad we could talk about kitty testes this evening. I have a $10 question here from Dr. Wolfgang Amadeus Gotterdammerung, and it is simply, what have you been reading?
Well, I've been reading a number of things. I've been reading a book on the physiology of the human brain, which I recommend, though I can't name the author because the book is not within arm's reach at the moment, but it is called Behave, and a most interesting book it is, which analyzes all human behavior in the context of the anatomy and function of the human brain. Then I read something called The Lady from the Black Lagoon. I think that was the title, by one Mallory O'Meara, which is about the woman who created the famous monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon, but got no credit for it since the head of makeup at Universal Pictures was intensely jealous of any attention that she got and suppressed her participation. But now it's coming to light. She can be seen as a background player, usually put on for decoration, since she was very beautiful, in all sorts of Universal pictures, including such cheesy ones as I have seen, such as Abbott and Costello Meet Captain Kidd, which was not Charles Laughton's finest moment. Once again, this happens. I lose track of what the original question is in the labyrinth of the answer. So if you could just briefly mention it, I'll get back on track. Oh, what I read.
What have you been reading?
Vathek by William Beckford. I not only read it with relish, but I am reading it on my radio show, a piece at a time. I hope the listeners will have patience to it. I was going to read the story written by Clark Ashton Smith, which was a sequel to this very strange, bizarre, occult 18th century novel, which is about an evil caliph who eventually achieves his goal of attaining the underground kingdom of fire, full of horrible deeds and acts and strange creatures and spirits, efreets, jinn, and finally Eblis himself, the Mohammedan Satan, is encountered in the underground world. And I think that once I finish reading this, I will certainly be able to read Smith's story, which, like all his stories, are worth visiting. And what else did I read? I read a book called Robin, which is a book about the robin, as its name suggests. It is a part of a series of books which I think are offered by the University of Chicago Press. Another one is called Vulture. In fact, there are many books, each about a specific creature. Most interestingly to me, it turns out that what I have always thought was a robin is not a robin. The American robin is a kind of thrush. It's the European robin that is the Who Killed Cock Robin robin. And this is why in Walt Disney's Mary Poppins, it is incongruous, if not jarring, to find Julie Andrews, while singing, finds a nest of American robins nesting outside the house where she is in the heart of London. But things like that never bothered Walt Disney, and perhaps they shouldn't bother us too much. The American robin is a thrush of the genus Turdus, with many species. But they're fine songbirds, and I'll always call them a robin. So there you have it.
Yeah, we've been getting a ton of birds by our feeders, and all lots of activity.
Any robins? Any redbreasts?
We have American robins.
Yes.
Are they the same?
Well,
as the
I do happen to have that one nearby. The author is Helen F. Wilson. And these books all characteristically have a red top with a picture of the animal that is described. It makes quite a good read for those who are interested. And I like The Lady from the Black Lagoon, too. I liked Vafek, and I like them all.
The gentleman who wore the suit just passed away.
Oh, really?
Yep, and just, I think in the last week or two.
Huh. That's too bad.
If the audience can confirm that factoid, his name slips me offhand. We met him at a convention once. It was quite cranky at the convention.
He wore a suit, you say?
Yeah, he was the creature. He was the guy in the creature suit.
Oh, Riku Browning.
That's him. Yes.
Yeah.
He just passed away recently.
You see, there was a different person in the suit when the creature was on land than the one who could swim underwater when the creature was underwater. But it was possible for the monster to swim underwater genuinely without faking an underwater setup. And there are many other felicities associated with the creature from the Black Lagoon, who persisted in popular culture and eventually was glorified in The Shape of Water, where he actually does get the girl, and the person who would, in a 1950s monster movie, be the hero is revealed as the villain.
That movie actually scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid.
Which one? The
creature.
The Shape of Water, or the creature from the Black Lagoon?
Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, he's scary. He swims along underneath Julie Adams while she's swimming and almost touches her, and then he does touch her. Well, let's continue.
Well, but we have a monster movie moment coming up, our second one this evening. And
speaking of the Monster Kingdom.
Absolutely, and we still have room in our queue for questions. We have all night long to answer your questions, and we are only more than happy to do so. So audience, please feel free to get those questions in to Dr. Hal. We will make sure that they get to the good doctor and that they all get answered. So with that, Dr. Hal, here is our next monster movie moment.
Very good. Russ Tamblyn, who we briefly saw there, dumbfounded the team of Eiji Saburia and Inshiro Honda by not speaking the dialogue he was supposed to, indeed often making up his own dialogue, which enlivens the movie to some degree. At any rate, the other distinction that the movie War of the Gargantuas has, well, there are many distinctions, but it introduced the song "The Word Gets Stuck in My Throat," which was later covered by Devo and other bands during the punk period. In that film, no sooner is that song sung than the singer is seized by the monster, who chews her up and then spits what is left out on the tarmac at the airport. Well, let us continue.
We have questions in the queue, Dr. Hal. You will be happy to hear.
I am.
So let me start with one that's been waiting for a little while, and from our very, very good friend of the show, Dr. Penny. And it is a $25 question. And what is the purpose of Adam and Eve in Genesis?
Well, most interesting that one should ask. Thank you, Dr. Penny. What is the purpose of Adam and Eve in Genesis, and what is the purpose of us today, their supposed descendants? Is there a purpose, or are we placed there by whatever immanent will moves and urges everything for some clandestine, some hidden purpose? But the reason that Adam and Eve were put in Eden, as I understand it, is that it was appropriate for them to be there, that a beautiful creation demands someone to experience it and view it. But unfortunately, there was that business about the knowledge of good and evil, which they took on themselves. There were, of course, pre-human races, which Vathek, the novel I mentioned, gets into. Among these, the Nephilim, the beings slightly below the angels, but slightly above humans, who, according to the book of Genesis, at one time invaded the earth and had sexual intercourse with the daughters of men, i.e., women. And of course, the women would choose them because they were large, beautiful, and sexy, unlike the lumpy peasants of the time in those pre-Diluvian eras. The recent movie about Noah's Ark came out, and I saw it with some misgivings. Who would guess that the bad guy, whose presence is unknown in the scriptures, stowed away in the ark and was eating endangered species to stay alive? Another problem for long-suffering Mrs. Noah, played by Jennifer Connelly in that movie. But the reason I mention it is that the Nephilim are sort of presented in that film, only the filmmakers thought it proper to represent them as a rock creature like that scene in the movie Galaxy Quest, an assembly of rocks somehow joined by invisible bonds into the semblance of a pugnacious creature. I assure you, this is not the way that Nephilim or other pre-Adamite races are described in the ancient texts. Their appreciation of the world is unknown. It takes humans, really, at their middle point between nothingness and the divine to do that thoroughly, although not all of them do, as we know very well. I hope that answer, even though it goes around Robin Hood's barn, as they say, is somewhat satisfactory. And because of the generosity of your financial accompaniment, I have a poem from Dylan Thomas. This bread I break was once the oat, this wine upon a foreign tree plunged in its fruit. Wine in the day, or man at night, laid the crops low, broke the bread's joy. Once in this wine the summer blood knocked in the flesh that decked the vine. Once in this bread the oat was merry in the wind. Man broke the sun, pulled the wind down. This flesh you break, this blood you let, make desolation in the vein. Are oat and grape born of the sensual blood and sap? My wine you drink, my bread you snap.
Wonderful. I have a $24 question from another good friend of the show, Mob Miati.
Great. From Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah, another person in my neck of the woods. Well, what happened to Doc Savage's shirt, and why won't he just get a new one?
Well, each time Clark Savage, who was the son of someone else known as Clark Savage, is in one of his adventures, his shirt is unable to contain his more than humanly powerful muscular frame, and it does tend to rip and tear, displaying rippling muscles in his torso, allegedly bronze looking, as he was called the Man of Bronze. He also had metallic bronze pupils of his eyes, among his other anatomical peculiarities. And before he swung into action, is said to have made a trilling sound like that of a songbird, which must have disconcerted the bad guy, if nothing else. Well, it's more germane, I would think, to say, why do the pants that he wears survive whatever assault rips up the shirt? Not to mention the knee-high boots, which were part of his ensemble. But at least he could know that when he got back to his home, New York City, and his office in the Empire State Building, he could put on an entire wardrobe which would be waiting for him to be present in the social scene and to hobnob with his friends, which included Lamont Cranston, otherwise known as the Shadow, and other crime fighters of the period. The first Doc Savage adventure took place in a South American locale, but then he ranged all over the world. And I recently read one that was not published in the lifetime of its author, one Lester Dent, but was withdrawn since he fought Stalinist communists. And this novel shapes up about as much as the other Doc Savage novels. Among other contemporary enthusiasts of the Doc Savage oeuvre, we find Ivan Stang, the head of the Church of the Subgenius. And it might be a good thing to point out that Doc Savage had the Fortress of Solitude before Superman did. Doc Savage liked to go up into the Arctic and sit there in the snow in his skivvies to toughen his bronze epidermis, and he also had giant laboratories and things there. But the idea of a Fortress of Solitude is one which some of the rest of us envy. How much did you say came along with that question, Pontius?
That was a $24 question, Dr. Hal.
Very well. Here's a poem by Clark Ashton Smith. It has to do with the unfortunate sinking of Atlantis, which Plato has described in his book, The Timaeus. Of course, Atlantis, as we understand it, was not just one land, but an archipelago of islands, the greatest of which was given the name Atlantis by later writers. But the people at the time called it Poseidonus because their chief god was Poseidon, the son of Zeus, known as the Earth Shaker, since this god is not only the god of the sea, but the god of earthquakes, something which turned out to be unfortunate for the Atlanteans. This poem is called Ugabalus and is about an Atlantean god. In billow lost Poseidonus, I was the god Ugabalus. My 3 horns were of Similor above my central diadem. My one eye was a moon-wan gem found in a monstrous meteor. Incredible far peoples came, called by the thunder of my fame, and fleetly passed my terraced throne, where Titan pards and leopards stood, as pours an ever-lapsing flood before the winds of winter blown. Before me, many a chorister made offering of alien myrrh, and copper-bearded sailors brought from isles of ever-foaming seas enormous lumps of ambergris and corals intricately wrought. Below my glooming architraves, one brown eternal file of slaves came in from miles of Chalcedon, and camels from the long plateaus, laid down their sard and peridot, their incense and their cinnamon. But now, within my sunken walls, the slow, blind ocean serpent crawls, and sea worms are my ministers, and wandering fishes pass me now, or press before mine eyeless brow, as once the thronging worshippers.
Awesome. I have a question here from Horseflesh. It is a $10 question, and it is: the existence of the subgenius suggests the existence of a spectrum of entities. Perhaps there is an ultragenius, or even a subdoofus. What is the role of the subgenius in such a cosmic hierarchy of varied intellects? Are there other prophets like our beloved Bob?
Well, according to subgenius doctrine and lore, there have always been Bobs and always will be Bobs, but J.R. Bob Dobbs has a deservedly central position as being the most subgenius, in that Dobbs is the world's most slackful person as envisaged, and the subgenius must have slack. But it is a common misconception that the word subgenius has something to do with intelligence. It does not, as has been frequently asseverated by Ivan Stang and other Solons who should certainly know. There are multiple theories then about the true meaning of the term, and mine is that one parse the word. Sub means under, and genius is another word for spirit. The genie encountered in the novel Vathek and in the Arabian Nights story of Aladdin and the wonderful lamp from the Thousand Nights and a Night is one of those airish spirits which did the bidding of Solomon Daoud, who was the wisest person of his time until he got mixed up with Balkis, the queen of Sheba. But that's another story. So genius then means a spirit, and a subgenius is one who is under a spirit. Whose spirit? Your spirit, your genius. Because you see, there is a God, or at least you've got one, residing in your skull, the subconscious mind. The part of your brain that you think is you is only that part which creates consciousness, which you think of as entity. But in fact, the entire brain is working on your behalf, loves you, and wants you to succeed. The entire brain synthesizes information and has it ready to present to you, and will do so once you learn to silence the chatter of the point of consciousness in the mind. If you are thinking about something and want to know an answer that you can't recall, stop thinking about it, because your thinking about it is what prevents you from receiving the answer. You will find that once you do so, your subconscious mind, your genius, will float up the answer to you, and you will have it. And we think that a subgenius is one who gives up any other entity to willingly serve the genius, the subconscious mind, the spirit, the animating spirit, not the soul, which is a different matter, for which you must consult the book of the subgenius and its many following texts.
I have a question here from Reverend Forrest Gummo. It is a $9 question. And it is: can you reckon forth a theory and practice of time control?
Well, time control is one of those subgenius doctrines. And it is said, I'll say on the side, that any old thing a subgenius says is automatically woven in to be part of the unified belief system of the Church of the Subgenius. That being said, one should control what time one has. So time control essentially becomes a form of self-control. One doesn't like the idea of control, of being controlled. Therefore, one should, as a subgenius, be the one who controls and control how we spend this slide toward oblivion, which takes place at the rate of 60 seconds per minute. Pleasurable things happen at a great rate and are soon over, but painful things often seem to last. The object of time control is to reverse this, or perhaps at least find some equivalent. As we understand the transitory nature of the universe and time itself, this is not as improbable or even as impossible as it may seem. However, in the end, time controls us and not we who control time.
I have a question here from our good friend Reverend Xenofact. It is a $10 question. And it is another subgenius question. Dr. Hal, the subgenius community intersects with many subcommunities. One such subcommunity are furries. If you were or are a furry, what animal would most embody you and why?
Well, an interesting question and an interesting proposition. If you are long-time viewer of this show, at one time we presented Susie Tompkins, who did a video on her musical presentation about the furry at the end of the bar, where she attends a furry convention and is about to go up. She does go up with one animal imposter to the hotel room and then finds to her consternation that it's her dad inside the costume. Terrible resolution. But the whole furry thing, I don't know. I don't know if I would wear a furry costume. And if I did, it might be a gorilla suit or something like that. To my affinity with apes, but the animals I identify with the most do not have fur at all. One requires a more and more elaborate costume. However, this is part of the fun. Furries existed even before the Church of the Subgenius, and the courts of kings and princes often contained these characters, which is one way that the nobility found to amuse themselves. But it certainly is flourishing today, and there are conventions. This is somehow at times allied with cosplay, where people dress up as famous semi-human or animaloid characters. My own totem animal, the Stegosaurus, does not really lend itself to a costume, unfortunately, or such a costume, if worn, would be extremely uncomfortable. But I can watch the furries from a distance and be happy that they are entertaining themselves, and insofar as it is possible, wish them well.
We should revisit the squirrel at the end of the bar.
Yes,
video.
It was the squirrel at the end of the bar, not the furry at the end of the bar. Yeah, that was a good one by Susie Tompkins. Oh, we have a big backlog of stuff which we've presented. I hope our audience is going to our site and downloading those early shows. That's what they're for. As someone who's on Radio Valencia, I found out to my distress that a huge chunk of my past archives was devoured by a computer glitch. However, by means from outside the Radio Valencia, it may be possible to restore them. More on that later.
You know how? No, I'm actually glad you brought that up. I will put out there to the audience, if anyone out there has those old episodes, let me know, and we'll arrange some way to get those collected and to see if we can't restore some of that archive.
Someone did send me an electronic device, which I meant to consult you about, and will in another context in this show, which supposedly contains not only of those episodes, but K-Rob's missing episodes also.
I will definitely do that. And we should probably mention the upcoming June event.
Yes.
Which is, I believe, June 9th through the 11th in New York. It is the Real X Day, and there are quotes around that. The Real X Day, taking place in June in New York. I can gather those details and contact information.
I believe I'm going to be present at the Real X Day and the Real X Day, the one at the nudist camp in Florida, as well as at the Starwood Festival coming up, which will involve much traveling. Well, here in this slab-like device, supposedly all these episodes reside, but I lack the electronic acuity to know how to activate it, and I hope that with your aid, I can do just that. They also sent along a patch cord, which is always necessary in these circumstances.
Easy peasy.
Glad to hear it.
Easy. If worse comes to worse, Hal, we can do it in June.
All right, excellent.
When I see you, and that way we can also get that archived. And make sure that it's got copies made.
I think there's more than just those episodes on there, according to the correspondent who sent them.
Well, see, I have something similar for you when we see you in June. So I will be giving you a disc, so I'll certainly be walking you through using it when we do that in June.
You'll slip me a disc, eh?
I'm going to slip you a disc, man. Hey, so I've got more questions. I have a $3 question here from Mariba. I believe that's how it's pronounced. My apologies if I get it wrong. But it says, if you'll talk about him, then I'll ask. Will we ever hear the gracious chords of the great Reverend Stang or the Lonesome Cowboy on your corner of the interwebs?
Well, I'm capable of playing them on my Radio Valencia show. I do not go out of my way to play those guys. People have often complained that I rely too much on archival material, but what can I do? I'm there in the studio where most of the stuff doesn't work, and I have to keep up a radio show. There's plenty of stuff from Stang's wonderful show, now suspended, the Hour of Slack, on which one could often hear the fulminations of Lonesome Cowboy Dave, an author who is published by the Subgenius Church, as a matter of fact. No doubt, as I go through these recordings, in the fullness of time, attentive listeners to my show will hear some of it. And yet I should say that although I do play this recorded material, I feel there is a need to freshen it up. So often I listen as I play it and shoot in commentary where there is a gap. One will therefore not receive the authentic originals in this case, but for that one can always go to the collection of the many Hours of Slack.
I have a question here from a Ko-fi supporter. It is for $5.
That's great. Let me shoot in one more thing. The name of Reverend Lonesome Cowboy's Dave's book is Neighbor World, in case anyone is interested in finding it and reading it. So what about this question?
I have Neighbor World right up here, actually. Here it is.
All right. Yes, let's see what this legendary book looks like. Oh, wow. Even a hardback copy. Or is it? Is that a paperback?
Paperback,
it is paperback. Oh, those are convenient.
There's something in... Oh, look. There's Dobbs stickers stuck in there. So
there are Dobbs stickers of the spirit in the pages, even if one doesn't find the actual thing.
Those need to go up in my nearest restroom somewhere. That's where Dobbs stickers belong. We have new stickers, by the way, that we'll be making up for this show. So, because we have a new website that we're using, AskDrHalShow.com.
Which is easier to remember than the other one for many people.
Theoretically. Everything is theoretical until proven otherwise. So
exactly,
it's there and it's new, and it's special. And I have a couple more questions for you. Let me see. I have a question here. It is a $5 question. And who would win in a fight? Spider-Man or Spider-Man's weight in spiders?
Well, this seems a very unequal contest to me, because Spider-Man would prevail, assuming that he wasn't bitten by such an accumulation of spiders. But that is unlikely, since most spiders are unable to bite a human whose skin, whose epidermis is too thick for their tiny little jaws. In most cases, we all know about the exceptions. The largest spider on Earth, or what was thought to be that until very recently, the Theraphosa blondii, or wandering spider, can inject its venom readily, and it's a bad deal because it's so huge. Then it can penetrate the skin. But for the most part, people who say, "Oh, I have spider bites," and so on, don't know what they're talking about, since to all intents and purposes, spiders do not bite. But beyond that, spiders are fragile, and Spider-Man is almost invulnerable. Spiders are extremely delicate and very easy to destroy because they are hydraulically operated. The high fluid pressure inside the arachnid body, the lymph of its circulatory system, is what extends the leg of a spider when it takes a step. Then the muscles that the spider has within its exoskeleton contract the leg, but it has no muscles that extend the leg. Once the body is breached or the seals are broken, the spider will very shortly be dead. And then you will see this characteristic death form of the spider where it folds its legs in. It folds its legs in because there is no more pressure to keep them extended. So spiders have evolved various strategies to keep themselves out of danger. But when you're attacking a rumbustious human on a rampage, particularly one of these super powerful types that we're always hearing about, the victor in the contest can easily be ascertained. Recently, the brown widow spider has been making great inroads in the United States, moving from Florida into the other states, and it is replacing the black widow, its close relation. The brown widow can bite, but unlike the black widow, its bite is nothing to fear. So here is a spider invasion making things a little better for the humans. Do they appreciate it? I fear not.
We have black widows here. We come across them every once in a while. They're beautiful animals. We don't like them.
They are dangerous if you get bitten by one, but you can only be bitten by one by being so obnoxious around it that it just has to bite you. Otherwise, they stay in the web. And the web can always be determined because it is thicker and tougher than other spider webs, and you can immediately feel that it is so strong that it's pulling at you, pulling at your finger. Unfortunately, one of the few things that causes the black widow to bite is someone sticking his finger in the web and damaging it. Anyway, let us move forward.
Absolutely. I have a question here from Reverend Dr. Les, and I saved this because I love this question. Is it even possible to have a hootenanny anymore?
Why wouldn't it be possible? The thing is, not everybody appreciates that type of music, and yet enough people do so that you could get people together to hear a collection of folk music. Here in San Francisco, we have the hardly strictly bluegrass festival, which takes place, and many different types of music are heard. But I wonder if this question really means, is it possible to have any nice, peaceful assemblage of people without gun-toting crazies coming in and creating a scene of apocalyptic destruction? That, of course, has nothing to do with the provenance of folk music. You could say that a hootenanny is any place where folk music is played or sung. And so when you give it those parameters, you can believe that you have probably been to one. But it's also true that this type of music deals with traditional songs and therefore will not put money in anyone's pocket. And this is the strongest problem that the prospect of a hootenanny faces.
Well, Dr. Hal, I've shaken the jar, and that was the last question we had for this evening.
The last question.
The last question.
Well, it was bound to come.
You know, ends are always inevitable. So,
yes.
But it was a good show, and I think we had a lot of great questions. And
well, I'm glad you thought so. I can never tell, being too close to it. But don't forget, you, if you're not tired of all of this, can join us in the chat room after we conclude the show.
Go ahead. I'm going to throw the link up to the audience.
Oh, very good. Yes, please do. It's easy to get to, as we've said.
And I'm putting it up there right now. There we go.
Righty.
That is the link, ladies and gentlemen, out in the Twitch chat queue. And I'm going to throw it over into my chat queue with Dr. Hal. Now everyone has it.
Yes. All right. Well, if you don't have it, simply go to our website and you will be guided from there to join us.
AskDrHalShow.com. Easy
That's
peasy.
Right.
And Professor Gofflin just put it in the chat. Yay!
Thank you, Professor Gofflin.
Well,
doing my job, trying to.
It's cool having you here. We're really glad that you're part of the show now. We've been trying to suck you in for a while. So we're glad we finally caught you in our gravitational pull.
Oh, well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much.
We are honored to have you. Thank you. Well, let's see. We still have your closing recitation for the evening, and then we're going to go ahead and open up our after show video chat to hang out with the guests for a while. So. Friends, colleagues, please join us at the after show video chat. And let's see. I think that's it. Dr. Hal, do you have anything else?
Nothing but the final recitation.
All right. Well, you go ahead and prepare for that. And I've got one brief thing before we get to it. And folks, we will see you, if we don't see you live, at the Real X Day or the other events that Dr. Hal will be attending. We also have Starwood coming up, which Dr. Hal and I may both be at as well.
They seem to want a subgenius devival, don't they?
It's sounding like that. We'll have to see what their planning committees come up with. I'm still waiting to hear some results. But I think things will be interesting. Things are always interesting. We keep it interesting. That's what we do. That's our job. Anyway.
Well, that's an interesting gathering, also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very eclectic generally. It is not what it appears to be on the surface. It's quite an interesting group of people, and the real festival happens on the road. It's not the events. It's not the the bands, it's not the seminars that they do. It's the people that you meet on the road. You meet some really interesting people. So I recommend all these things. They're cool events to go to, and you meet some of the most interesting people on the planet. Cool stuff. Anyway, Dr. Hal, if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping everything up, and you can get ready for your final recitation.
Thank you.
All right, and we will see you at the after show chat. Don't forget to mark your calendars. The next Ask Dr. Hal show will return June 18th, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, only on Twitch. Visit AskDrHalShow.com for more details.
From the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, the Edward Fitzgerald translation, an excerpt. Myself, when young, did eagerly frequent doctor and saint, and heard great argument about it and about. Yet evermore came out by the same door as in I went. With them the seed of wisdom did I sow, and with mine own hand wrought to make it grow. And this was all the harvest that I reaped. I came like water, and like wind I blow into this universe, and why, not knowing, nor whence, like water willy-nilly flowing. And out of it, as wind along the waste, I know not whither, willy-nilly blowing. What without asking, whither hurried hence, and without asking, hither hurried whence? Ah, many a cup of this forbidden wine must drown the memory of that insolence. Up from earth's center through the seventh gate I rose, and on the throne of Saturn sate, and many a knot unraveled by the road, but not the master knot of human fate. There was the door to which I found no key. There was the veil through which I could not see. Some little talk a while of thee and me there was, and then no more of me and thee. Earth could not answer, nor the seas that mourn in flowing purple of their Lord forlorn, nor rolling heaven with all his signs revealed, or hidden by the sleeve of night and morn. Then of the thee and me who works behind the veil, I lifted up my hands to find a lamp amid the darkness, and I heard as from without, the thee within me blind. Then to the lip of this poor earthen urn I turned, the secret of my life to learn, and lip to lip it murmured unto me, drink, for once dead you never can return. I think the vessel that with fugitive articulation answered, once did live and drink, and ah, the passive kiss I took, how many kisses did it take and give? For I remember stopping by the way to watch a potter thumping his wet clay, and with its all obliterated tongue it murmured, gently, brother, gently, pray. And hath not such a story from of old down man's successive generations rolled, of such a clod of saturated earth cast by the Maker into human mold, and not a drop that from our cups we throw for earth to drink of, but may steal below to quench the fire of anguish in some eye there hidden far beneath and long ago. As then the tulip, for her morning sup of heavenly vintage from the soil looks up, do you devoutly do the like the same, lest earth to heaven invert you like an empty cup. Perplex no more with human or divine. Tomorrow's tangle to the winds resign, and lose your fingers in the tresses of the cypress slender minister of wine. And if the wine you drink, the lip you press, ends with what all begin or end in, yes, think then you are today what yesterday you were. Tomorrow you shall not be less. So when that angel of the darker drink at last shall find you at the river's brink, and offering the cup, invite your soul forth to your lips to quaff, you shall not shrink. Why, if the soul can fling the dust aside, and naked on the air of heaven ride, were it not a shame? Were it not a shame for him in this clay carcass, crippled to abide? 'Tis but a tent where takes his one day's rest a sultan to the realm of death addressed. The sultan rises, and the dark Ferash strikes, and prepares it for another guest. And fear not lest existence closing your account and mine should know the like no more. The eternal Saki from that bowl has poured millions of bubbles like us, and will pour when you and I behind the veil are past. Ah, but the long, long while this world shall last, which of our comings and departures heeds as the sea's self should heed a pebble cast. A moment's halt, a momentary taste of being from the well amid the waste, and lo, the phantom caravan has reached the nothing it set out from. Oh, make haste. Would you that spangle of existence spend about the secret? Quick about it, friend. A hair perhaps divides the false and true, and upon what, prithee, may life depend? A hair perhaps divides the false and true. Yes, and a single alif were the clue, could you but find it, to the treasure house, and peradventure to the master too, whose secret presence through creation's veins, running quicksilver-like, eludes your pains, taking all shapes from Ma to Mahi, and they change and perish all, but he remains. A moment guessed, then back behind the fold, immersed of darkness, round the treasure rolled, which to the pastime of eternity he doth himself inspire, contract, behold. But if in vain, down on the stubborn floor of earth and up to heaven's unopening door, you gaze today while you are you, how then tomorrow you, when shall be you no more? Waste not your hour or in the vain pursuit of this or that endeavor or dispute. Better be jocund with the cordial grape than sadden after none or bitter fruit. You know, my friends, with what a brave carouse I made a second marriage in my house, divorced old barren reason from my bed, and took the daughter of the vine to spouse. For is and is not, though with rule and line, and up and down by logic I define, of all that one should care to fathom, I was never deep in anything but wine. But my computations, people say, reduced the year to better reckoning? Nay, 'twas only striking from the calendar, unborn tomorrow, and dead yesterday. And lately by the tavern door agape came striding through the dusk an angel shape, bearing a vessel on his shoulder, and he bid me taste of it, and 'twas the grape. The grape that can with logic absolute the 72 jarring sects confute, the sovereign alchemist that in a trice life's leaden metal into gold transmute. the mighty Mahmud, Allah-breathing Lord, that all the misbelieving and black horde of fears and sorrows that oppress the soul scatters before him with his whirlwind sword. Why be this juice the growth of God? Who dare blaspheme the twisted tendril as a snare? A blessing, we should use it, should we not? Or if a curse, why then who set it there? I must abjure the balm of life, I must, prompted by some after-reckoning taken on trust, or lured with hope of some diviner drink to fill the cup when crumbled into dust. Oh, threats of hell and hopes of paradise. One thing at least is certain, this life flies. One thing is certain, and the rest is lies. The flower that blows today forever dies. Strange is it not that of the myriads who before us passed the door of darkness through, not one returns to tell us of the road which, to discover, we must travel too. The revelations of devout and learned who rose before us and as prophets burned are all but stories which arose from sleep. They told their comrades, and to sleep returned. I sent my soul through the invisible, one letter of that afterlife to spell, and by my soul returned to me and answered, I myself am heaven and hell. Heaven, but a picture of fulfilled desire, and hell, the shadow from a soul on fire, cast on the darkness into which ourselves so late emerged from shall so soon expire. We are not other than a moving row of magic shadow shapes that come and go, round by the sun-illumined lantern held at midnight by the master of the show, but helpless pieces of the game he plays upon his checkerboard of nights and days, hither and thither, moves and checks and slays, then one by one back in the box he lays.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Please join us for our after-show video chat. For links to this and more, visit our website at AskDrHalShow.com.